G'day everyone, welcome to Footyology TV, coming at you live from the studios of Southern FM in Brighton. Very good evening, Finey.
G'day RoCo. I guess we can say that this afternoon, this round, the plot unthickened.
Yeah, it did. The wheat sort of separated from the chaff a bit, didn't it? I mean, in a nutshell, Melbourne will play in their first final series for 12 years, so congrats to the Demons and all their long-suffering fans. It was a bloody good win, which we'll go into in detail. Port Adelaide will need a minor miracle, i.e. Geelong losing to Gold Coast at the Cattery to make it. They've got to beat Essendon too. So basically the 8 is settled. However, in keeping with the flavour of the last few weeks, 7 teams still have the opportunity to get a double chance in the finals, including the Demons.
That's what we call all to play for, isn't it? Because that's really the key to winning a premiership, is getting that double chance.
Yeah, well, we had that anomaly a couple of years ago, of
With
course,
the
with the Bulldogs. Yep. But last year basically underscored again, you need to finish top 4. So let's quickly run through the ladder. Richmond tying up the minor premiership and the McClellan Trophy. That's sadly underlooked, honour that they have won.
Remember the old calculation?
First, seconds and thirds,
yes.
Correct. 21 games played, 68 points to the Tigers. They will finish on top. West Coast. Now, here's a bit of a plot thickening as well. The Eagles not guaranteed of top 2 and home final now. They need to beat Brisbane at the Gabba next week to shore up their top 2 spot. They're on 60 points. Collingwood, third on 56 points. They need the Eagles to lose to the Lions, and if they beat Freo in Perth, they will take over second spot.
Virtually identical percentages, those two teams.
Yes, separated by 0.1% at this stage. So basically, Pies need Eagles to lose, they win, they take over second. Hawthorn and Sydney, 4th and 5th respectively, and that makes next week's Saturday night clash one for the ages, basically a battle for a double chance spot and a second crack at it.
And there is something interesting in that, because Hawthorn's percentage is almost the same as Collingwood's and West Coast as well. So they could possibly, with everything going their way, finish second.
Correct. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Although, I mean, if they finish 4th and play Richmond at the MCG, the difference is just the opponent rather than the venue, really, isn't it?
But possibly a West Coast game at the MCG.
Yes, which
could be delicious.
Far preferable.
Yep.
Delicious, I like that. So Hawthorn, Sydney in 5th, GWS in 6th. They can get top 4 provided, here we go, Collingwood lose, as well as obviously one of Hawthorn, Sydney losing. So still a chance. And the Demons, like I said, they beat GWS. Collingwood loses against Fremantle in Perth, and the Demons will jump in to the top 4. That's about all it's worth going over. What do you make of it all?
Well, probably, look, a pivotal game is Collingwood-Fremantle. If Fremantle upset the Pies, then teams as low as 7th can get the double chance.
And it would be just like the Dockers to do it, wouldn't it, after copping the biggest drubbing in the club's entire history to come out and play a blinder?
Well, I think there would be some trepidation at Collingwood. They would have rathered Fremantle lost by 39 points and nobody would have been any the wiser. But they're going to cop the rounds of the kitchen this week.
Yeah.
They're not going to avoid the glare. So they will have an opportunity in one game to step out against a famous foe and really put a spanner in the works for their season. So they can play. They've sort of been gifted a mini final because it's such an important game. Redemption is at hand. I'm worried for the Pies.
Need a bit more than that for redemption in my book. Very remiss of me, as I forget every week, to say we're after your comments and questions. Leave them there on the comment spot on the Facebook live feed. We've got one already from Tony TC. The Dr. McClellan Trophy, remember looking up the totals in the footy record each week in the 70s. There would have been a runaway winner in 1973, Finey, when the Tigers won the first, seconds, thirds premiership and the fourths, I think.
With Essex Heights.
Essex Heights in the old, Southeast Suburban Footy League.
I remember as a St Kilda supporter, St Kilda never had a strong under-19s, and even though they were worth less points than the others, I always blamed the kids. But North Melbourne, I remember, was very strong in McClellan Trophy reckonings.
Always good thirds when Dennis Pagan was coaching it.
Yep.
However, time to get cracking now. We've got 9 big games to wrap up in full. Time for the wraparound. As he shuffles his papers very importantly on the desk, you notice the production values are getting better by the week, Finey, and it's a credit to our hard-working production crew of Andrew Davies and Craig Davis. Men, your services are much appreciated. All right, let's start with a fantastic game in Perth today, West Coast and Melbourne. And the D's ensuring that first finals participation since 2006. 16-12, 108. Defeat of the Eagles, 14-7, 91. Cracking game this. I'd put it in the top half dozen games of the season. D's made the running, led virtually the whole game, but West Coast just keeping in touch. Took a major hit, literally and metaphorically, when Darling went down with concussion. Of course, Kennedy already out, and they really had to change up their whole forward setup as a result.
And I really thought that moment goes to the integrity of the concussion system.
Yeah.
If ever a team would be swayed to overlooking maybe the finer points of concussion, they needed Darling on the field. It would have shored up second place. He didn't look to be so distressed when he was sitting in the dugout, but there are protocols, and it's great that all the clubs follow it because the medical officers at each club are first and foremost doctors. So just a big thumbs up for that.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the Demons because the acid was on them, wasn't it? 0-7 against top 9 teams until this game, and they got everything right. I thought Max Gawn was outstanding in the ruck. I thought their on-ballers at his feet were terrific, particularly James Harms. What a player he's becoming.
How well has he gone in the last month?
Well, basically, not a run with roll, but accountable for Luke Shuey.
Yes.
And I thought he curtailed Shuey, and not only that, but won plenty of the ball, kicked some goals. He was fantastic. Clayton Oliver, again, the sort of game you expect from Clayton Oliver these days. And in lieu of Jesse Hogan, now I did say on Thursday in our audio podcast, I didn't think the loss of Hogan was necessarily fatal at all because they've got a great spread of goal kickers. So Melksham basically took over in that medium-sized goal-kicking role. He was terrific. Still got a really capable key forward in Tom McDonald. And Mitch Hannon, another one of those, sort of jack-in-the-box medium-sized forwards, bobbed up. 10 goals between the three of them.
And there was also great run and hassle from Hannon as well.
Yeah.
So the goals were extremely important, but he really just, sort of gave it his all to provide some pressure in the forward line, a la Cripps at the other end, and he had the better of the battle by comparison.
A massive last quarter. Rioli snaps, and it's back to 3 points the difference. Lacroix puts the Eagles in front. Under 8 minutes left on the clock at that stage, and I thought, I reckon they're going to probably pinch this. But the Demons just came again. The last 3 goals of the game, 2 of them to Melksham. And Dean Kent, who's been a bit player really, but bobbed up with the clutch kick and goal to make the game safe.
Yeah, I've got to say that, look, they had a problem in, I think, the third quarter. There's Mitch Hibberd appeared to do his hamstring.
Michael Hibberd.
Michael Hibberd, sorry. Who's Mitch Hibberd?
One at North Melbourne?
Yeah, I think at North Melbourne. That's right. Yeah, so sorry, Michael Hibberd, of course. But he appeared to do his hamstring and sort of fought it out as best as he could. I want to make comment. Look, Melbourne have really sort of recrafted their team throughout the season. And Salem, I think he's had his detractors, but they've stuck with him throughout the year.
They wanted to burn him.
Of course, a reference to the Crucible and other matters in Massachusetts. But in the end, he's come good. And did you rate him? Do you rate him?
Yeah. I've always sort of thought of him as a lesser version of Petrarca or something like that. I mean, different roles, but yeah, no, he's not bad.
Unfortunately, Petrarca's a lesser version of Petrarca at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which shows how well they've done to pick up the slack with Harms and Hannon, and more power to them. Got to mention Willie Rioli. Why wouldn't you take a Rioli? Who's the worst Rioli? Who is the worst Rioli to play senior AFL footy?
Well, there was another Willie Rioli back at Hawthorn in about 1990.
Did he get a game?
He never. I don't think he ever played seniors.
I think of the ones to play seniors.
Yeah, they're all good.
I love Dean.
Rioli is good.
Yeah.
One more thing I want to say about Melbourne. I reckon it's always about finding that right balance between the hard at it stuff, which they do well, and that attacking bent. And sometimes when they hit the accelerator, they lose their defensive qualities. I thought today they got the balance spot on. And that's what makes them a really dangerous team. They're not as dependable as some, but when they get it right, they are as good as anyone bar Richmond for mine.
And a big thumbs up to the three umpires who did not bow to the pressure of the noise of affirmation. I thought they umpired the game on its merits, and the crowd was roaring.
Don't the Eagles fans boo more vociferous? Like they've got to.
They're so entitled. They really, at half time, when the frees were about even and the game was even, they were outraged that they hadn't pulled off another heist.
They've got a PhD in umpire dissatisfaction. The Eagles.
They certainly do.
All right, very quickly before we move on, can the Eagles still win the flag?
No.
Can Melbourne win the flag?
Yeah, look, we've got a tearaway winner leader, but they could play off for it.
Yes and yes for me, but very marginally. I think Richmond's got this flag won, to be perfectly honest. Speaking of which, let's move on to our second feature game, Friday night footy at the MCG. 76,000 people there. It was the Bombers' last shot, Finey, and they gave it a decent crack, but in the end, coming up short. Probably, I reckon, to be honest, the 8-point margin in the end might have flattered them a bit. Richmond 12-9-81, the Bombers 11-7-73. Once again, the Tigers finding goals through a variety of sources. Caddy 4, Martin 4, Rewald 2. Martin, terrific as per usual. Rance, great down back. Jaden Short, terrific down there. Geez, their defence is good. In fact, I find it hard to isolate the best part of the field for the Tigers. They're all that good.
Yep.
Bombers.
I think Rewald is a fantastic footballer, even when he's not kicking goals.
Oh no, I agree.
Some of his touches.
That was right on show, wasn't it, on Friday night? I noticed that more than I usually do with him. The amount of deft little taps.
Just brilliant.
The Bombers, and you made this observation before we started, and I agree with you. A little bit conservative early on.
Surprisingly so. I thought they'd come out running it, ripping it.
Well, I think it might have been just the sort of the occasion, just a little bit hesitant, nervy.
Too much respect. Fearful of running out of the back line. I mean, it wasn't until the final siren when Rioli caught Sard that it actually proved, their fears proved to be correct.
Well, that may have been a bit of a hangover from the first time they played this year. And that night I was sitting right up in the top deck and got a great view of just how well Richmond sets up behind the ball. And Essendon just kept going sideways in the back 50 and kicking the ball back to them. I guess they were very conscious of that, hence the more deliberate ball movement out of that defensive 50. Look, I've got to say, and yes, I do follow Essendon. There'll be a lot of talk this week about, has it been a wasted season?
No.
I don't think it has.
No way.
Because my theory with the Bombers is that had they won 2 out of the first 8. Mark Neal got the flick. There was a lot of self-examination going on. Had they won, say, 50% of those games or 5 of those games, I don't reckon they would have. I reckon they would have papered over the cracks a bit. And it would have been a bit like last year. You limp into the 8, you get drummed out again, everyone goes, oh, well, we make finals. That's a bit of a furphy sometimes, even making finals. I reckon they really had to become something different, and I reckon they've done that really effectively. I think they've got a harder edge. They're better defensively. All those numbers like clearances, contested ball, tackles, all went up accordingly. I think they're pretty well placed now for a decent sort of assault on next year. Now, having said that, I still think they're short of the mark. I still think they need a little more speed in midfield. I still think they need another key defender. I think they've got to be brave at the trade table. I'll just throw one out there. Do you reckon they'd consider trading David Zaharakis?
Of course they would, but I don't think he's got first-round currency.
Don't you?
No. How old is he?
It's probably about 28.
Yeah. You see, midfielders, for midfielders to have currency, they really need to be either, at that age, a Rory Sloane.
Yeah.
He's a really good footballer.
Yeah.
But late first round at best. I don't think he's got top 10 currency.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Can I ask you a question first?
Yeah.
Yes or no, Goddard next year?
No.
Okay.
And, I'm not sure that's going to be that big a deal. I mean, I reckon if they give him the wind-up, I can't see him going to another club.
No, not at all. No,
Yeah.
I think he's put his hand up to play, but I reckon he'd have a look at his form in the last couple of weeks and maybe question it himself.
Yeah, the thing about BJ is I reckon his mind is still that of a 23-year-old, but the reflexes aren't as quick, and that can get him into trouble. Just quickly on their defence too, you've got Martin Gleeson coming back next year. He's a seriously good player. And Aaron Francis. Well, I'm loving the look of Aaron Francis, Finey. He was fantastic for him Friday night. Quick one from Murray McKenzie. What are your thoughts on the Vale complaints about key forwards not being looked after, re Buckley, Cox, and now Dimmer and Jack?
Well, you know what? They do get looked after. There is enough in the rules now with chopping of the arms, and if a forward puts himself in the right position, they will get looked after. Now, I don't know exactly what. Of course, the coaches are going to put up their key forwards and put it in the umpire's mind, but I think it's tactical rather than real.
Yeah, I don't see too many key forwards getting absolutely crucified. Having said that, Ben Brown copped a shocker at the pointy end of that
What, the
Adelaide
push in the back?
North game. No, he was being held. It was a 1-on-2 and he was being held off the ball. But that's always happened. I mean, talk to Plugger and these guys about...
Yeah, of course.
Stephen Silvani used to behead blokes and not give away free kicks. Today, Sauce, if you're watching.
Devon Smith confirmed his B&F, the Crichton medal. Another great performance.
And lucky he didn't end up with about 3 or 4 weeks because that haymaker on Camden McIntosh didn't connect.
What was he thinking?
The
week after Andrew Gaff.
I know.
It was a proper...
I know. Well, it's just as well it missed.
Oh, Camden McIntosh just did the boxers move.
All right, let's move on.
Yep.
Saturday afternoon, back at the G, and another big game with huge ramifications, Collingwood and Port Adelaide. And the Pies. Hats off to the Pies. They have been, talk about resilient given the catalogue of injuries. And hang on, let me read the score. 17-13, 115. In the end, smashed Port Adelaide 10-4, 64. My rudimentary grasp on maths tells me that is a 51-point win.
It is a 51-point win after only being 2 goals up at three-quarter time, and spot on. I doffed my hat, which I'm not wearing, to Collingwood.
Yeah, been great.
I watched that game and as Port were really driving, and in the third quarter they were getting something out of Paddy Ryder, the game looked on. And you just looked at player-by-player contests, and on reputation, I thought Collingwood's in trouble here. Virtually every time Collingwood were going for the ball, you needed to check yourself and just remember the 36 isn't Swan, it's Braden Sear.
Yeah, he looks a bit like him, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's got that sort of move about him, and who's that? Was that Oxley? And is that Magden? And what's going on here? And who is that bloke? And what's that bloke doing out there?
They get good value from him though, don't they?
And they stormed home and won the game by 51 points. Well done, Collingwood.
Yeah, and a pivotal moment for mine was when Port was still looking a chance, and that 50 that Steve Motlop gave away with a really undisciplined whack to Braden Maynard's chest. And I mean, that shouldn't have been the turning point, but they just lost all heart. Once Collingwood got the first goal that last quarter, it was game over. Now, we'll expand on Port a bit in our hot or nots, but gee, they've been disappointing, haven't they? Yeah,
they've teased.
Yeah.
After the way they started the year, they've teased. And
well, they beat St Kilda round 16. They were 4th.
Yep.
Double chance. Had won, I think, 4 out of 5. Won 4 or 5 in a row.
Yep.
I think they've lost, 6 out of 7 since then? They've been terrible.
And they've really pointed to a handful of injuries that they've had. How can they mention injuries after playing against Collingwood, who had 14 or 15 quality players not playing.
Yeah, I think questions will be asked too about Rockcliffe, Watts, Motlop. Hasn't paid off. Well,
Motlop was good. I mean,
yeah, and he has been good for the last month or so. I mean, it could still pay off next year. They're still in the window for mine, but I've got some issues about the way they play footy. However, I will expand on that. Pies, they're brave. Can they play any better than that, do you think?
The thing that they've got going for them is potentially the right ladder position and the unpredictability that comes with a team that is basically cobbled together because of injury availability. So we harken back to the Dogs in 2016.
Yeah.
And I think Richmond would be far more comfortable on grand final day playing against, say, Sydney, which they know back to front.
Yeah.
And who I think in the last 18 months, or I know in the last 18 months, they have passed Sydney.
Yeah, it's a really good point, that. There's a real sort of lose a soldier, replace a soldier mentality that the Bulldogs had. And talking about goal kicking spread, I only just noticed this. 13 individual goal kickers in that tally of 17 goals. So isn't that a good example? Yep. Their 22 on Saturday would be so far away from the best 22 you would have penciled in for them at the start of the year.
I'll give you a perfect example of a player that you can't budget for on grand final day, but they don't want to play against Travis Varco. Even if Travis Varco hasn't had much of it in the week before or even at half time, he showed again in a few glimpses on Saturday afternoon. You do not want to play against him in a big game at the G.
Mate, the man who kicked the greatest goal in the history of football. Absolutely. The 2011 goal against the Pies, of course. Tony, again, hugely excited. Does Collingwood's resurgence reflect excellent recruiting and that the players needed time to adopt Bucks' intended playing style? Well, I would argue that, 12, 13, 14, 15, 6 years is a fair time to adapt to it. But something fundamental has changed. You know what? Like, it's hard. We're just guessing here. We're not inside the club, but I just suspect it's Bucks lightening up a bit, just allowing his assistants to, sort of not micromanaging as such. And I think backing his players in. And I think Richmond, that was a big theme going through Richmond last year. And I feel that. It's a feel opinion, that, but I don't think there's anything hugely dramatic fundamentally that's changed.
I think there is.
Or what do you think it is?
Because I've always felt that Collingwood's had a good list, and I've known that they've got depth and players that could come in and play respectable league football. Mm. Now, with injuries, those players have fortunately been given a couple of weeks to work their way into the team without the constant pressure of the revolving door. And over the last 3 or 4 years, there's just been too much pressure at the selection table on Collingwood players. I don't want to steal your thunder, but Chris Mayne is a perfect example of somebody who was given some clear water, some clear air, and has been able to work into football. Yeah. Like a Myercheck. He knew he had a couple of weeks on his side. Yeah. And I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, no, good point. Good point. All right, let's move on. And it was carnage down at the Cattery. Geelong, 24-14, 158. Defeated Fremantle. Fremantle. It was Fremantle. 3-7-25. 3 goals to 1. Fremantle in front, weren't they? And then Geelong rattled off 23 unanswered goals. That is, well, I don't mind saying it, that's disgraceful, really.
I watched the game. I watched it live.
And?
Look, at quarter time, I was really impressed by the effort Fremantle put in. Brendan Cox was playing really well at centre forward. Fife had come back and he makes a difference to that team. Mundy had started off up forward, kicked a goal, and then was a good body in the midfield. And to be honest, Ablett had 12 touches in the first quarter, but Selwood and Dangerfield were quelled. And that scoreline was fair. At quarter time, that was a reasonable scoreline.
Well, doesn't that make the last 3 quarters even more reprehensible?
So for the first 5 minutes of the second quarter, they still on the scoreboard and in their minds were in the game. As soon as Geelong got 2 goals ahead, now I'll give them the only excuse. They've got a lot of youngsters in that team that have played full seasons and have had enough. Likes of Gyro and others. And then there are players out there that are completely without any passion for the jumper. Walters is a wonderful footballer, but he's back to the concerning footballer that Ross Lyon took over when he arrived.
Yeah.
Michael Johnson should not be playing football because he refuses to go for a contest, just runs around looking for hive off cheap possessions in the back line.
He won't be after next week. Ross has retired, him and Daniel Pearce, I think.
But it was, I'm telling you, it was in the third quarter, the Geelong supporters, if you watch that game, you will hear Geelong supporters, I'm telling you, laughing.
Mm.
Like
there
was this atmosphere, and they were laughing at the passage of the movement of the ball.
Well, let's get serious about the Cats. Can they do anything from the bottom half?
No, they can't.
Well, I don't think it's that sort of definitive, but I still feel they're not quite good enough. I don't think this is a flag that you're going to be able to win from the bottom half of the eight.
They don't love the G, do they?
No, they don't. I think they're about 50-50 on it over their last dozen games. Quick one from Craig Williams. Thoughts on Geelong's prep for the finals? 2 potentially very easy home games with 0 opposition, then a bye. Surely not a great lead-in. Well, it's sort of one of those ones you end up answering in hindsight, isn't it? Like if they've got a number of sore players, guys to come back, maybe it is. But it's one of those ones where if they end up having a good final series, we'll say, oh, they got the spell and the easy run when they needed it. And if they get caught on the hop, we'll say, yeah, they weren't toughened up enough. Geelong strikes me as a side that is a bit susceptible to that. Like, remember 2 years ago when they won the qualifying, got the break, and then Sydney just came out and went bang in the preliminary, and it was all over.
But I would say they didn't showboat on Saturday. They really stuck to their business.
Yeah. Yeah, look, there's, Tom Hawkins has had a great year.
Yeah, but
Tim Kelly's been great.
He's played 3 marvellous games out of 4, but the 4th was against Richmond at...
Hawkins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was against Richmond, and, the games against Richmond and Hawthorn, actually, they're the more relevant ones, Well,
see, that's how I feel about Geelong as a whole. I feel like, they're very competitive, but they're just not quite good enough, and I reckon that's been shown reasonably consistently.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Another big game. What's this one? Battle of the Bridge in that wasteland Saturday twilight time slot, unfortunately. But it was a tough game, this, wasn't it? And GWS for 3 quarters looked, I thought, to have the Swans measure. And then the Swans, as they do. In fact, it reminded me a bit of that 2005 preliminary final against your boys where they were just sort of hanging on, and in the last quarter they just went bang. So 6-5 to 1-3 in the last quarter, and the Swans ended up winning by 20 points, 11-14, 80, defeated the Giants 8-12, 60.
Kieran Jack, fantastic.
Yeah. Be his best game for possibly, a couple of years.
But he's won a few of the medals that are up for grab in that game.
Yeah.
Whatever that medal is called.
What is it called?
The medal. The something medal.
The Brett Kirk medal.
Oh, the Brett Kirk medal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it slightly esoteric? It's sort of like a...
Yeah,
is it an orb or something?
Yeah, no, it's not a medal, it's a poem.
Yeah. Go on.
Look, again, GWS ended up without any interchange.
Yeah.
Gee, they copied it.
Can't take a trick.
Yeah, Ryan Griffin had one of those hammies that he wished wasn't a hammy, so he came back on and tried, but he couldn't play with it. Phil Davis bravely played on.
Yeah, he looked like he could barely walk.
Yeah, but he was courageous to the nines.
Yeah. And
then Finlayson went over on his ankle. It was another tough ask for them. And they fought hard. They fought tooth and nail. Having watched him all year, I think Canelio's tired or sore.
Yeah.
He started off well, but he couldn't do much in the second half.
I just want to put, we've got to move on, but I'll put this to you quickly. So, Sydney beats Hawthorn next week, they get that double chance, right?
Yes.
I feel it's far less likely that GWS will end up with it. I feel like if the Giants got the 4th spot, they could win the flag. I don't think they can win it without the double chance. Sydney, I don't think can win it even with the double chance.
I don't think GWS can win it.
Even if they got the double chance?
I just don't think so.
What about Sydney?
No, I don't think they can win it either.
No, I've got that. You don't sort of feel like they've got 3 games of that calibre in them, do you?
No, I agree. And just a word on Jeremy Cameron. you know, having let the team down with that incident against Brisbane,
Harris Andrews.
yep, you would have thought he would have come back, you know, really conscientious, but he was, again, I don't know if his mind's always 100% on playing team football. It is sometimes on wreaking vengeance, it's sometimes on kicking goals, but he didn't. I tell you what, he's no Himmelberg at the moment. I much prefer the way Himmelberg plays up forward.
He's good. I like Harry. All right, let's move on. The Q Clash, the much vaunted Q Clash in front of 11,907 people. Not a great turnout. Wasn't a great game, to be perfectly honest, but it had an exciting finish, and the Lions hung on 10-18, very inaccurate, 78, defeated Gold Coast 11-8, 74. In fact, there was probably 3 times as much talk in the aftermath about the post-siren cavorting between Took Miller and Dane Zorko as the game itself. Yeah. So let's talk about the game.
I watched it in sort of fast motion after the fact, which I do.
Did it help?
Which I do. And, well, it told me one thing, that for the entire game, Brisbane was in a position to sort of put Gold Coast away. They were 1 or 2 goals. But to Gold Coast credit, they did stick at it. And they had the most dangerous forward on the field, who I'll talk about in Hot or Not. Mm-hmm. He's become a real lively forward, Alex Sexton.
Oh, yeah. Gives good mo, too.
Yeah, I tell you what, you've got a more chance of getting a handball off Kevin Bartlett in, you know, replaying old cassettes than you do of getting one off Sexton. He's old-fashioned.
So, just a quick one on Gold Coast. Like, for all the rubbishing they've copped at stages this year, they end up with... Well, no, they're not going to beat Geelong. They're going to end up with 4 wins, second bottom, but they're only half a game behind your mob.
I wouldn't say running close to St Kilda's much of an achievement.
Ben Shaw says, is Dane Beams a sneaky Brownlow chance? I've got him top 3. Look, the recent history of the Brownlow is that you can win it with a down-the-order side. I don't know if you can win it with a side that's that low on the ladder, though.
He is absolutely. Look, one of the keys is to be a dominant midfielder in your team, because it's a midfielder's award, and if you can dominate, I'm telling you, he is a smoky chance. That is a very good SMS, very good.
All right, not SMS, mate. They're on the phone.
Whatever.
Read out this one from Travis Lubke.
I don't know how this came, by carrier pigeon, maybe, Travis. Should Brisbane have thrown the game against the Suns? Pick 2 would have been so much better than pick 7 in a poor draft if the AFL give the Suns and Carlton top 5 picks.
One word, Travis, no. You just don't.
Well,
you just...
But Carlton's not getting a top 5 pick. The only reason the Suns get 2 picks is because they'll get compensation for Lynch.
Yeah.
There's no second pick for Carlton.
But I'm not having a go at you, Travis, but I just find all that talk a furphy. And what happened to Melbourne? Look what happened to Melbourne. All that smart arsery about, oh yeah, we're not going to try as hard. The tanking debate. They get fined $500,000 and they ruin their culture for the next 5 years.
You don't do it.
You just don't do it.
Just go by their coach. I mean, Fagan is a lip reader's delight.
Yeah.
You can just... He enunciates his swear words very well, but he wants to win.
Wasn't Fagan the lovable crook in Oliver Twist?
Oh, he wasn't lovable. He was
Sorry.
He was Charles Dickens. Anyhow, I can get into...
Getting my Dickens mixed up. I think I've only read 2, that and Great Expectations.
He wasn't lovable.
Tony says Zorko lost the plot. Yeah, he did. He did.
Yep.
We agree on that. All right, let's move on. The Silk Miller Cup, and I'm not saying that facetiously, a very worthwhile cause, of course, commemorating the tragic slaying of policemen Gary Silk and Rod Miller, which the Saints and Hawks clashed for. Of course, Alan Jeans, who coached both clubs, was a policeman.
Indeed.
I enjoyed this game a lot, and I thought your boys were pretty good, Finey. In fact,
they were.
Even Alistair Clarkson sort of felt the better side lost. Final scores 12-8-80, the Hawks 11-10-76. So if I was a Saints fan, I'd be sitting there saying, well, where's this been all year? So where has it been?
Oh, look, this is a team with now a lot of first-year players in it, and with that, the injection of sort of excitement and, fresh face enthusiasm that was missing a bit from the side throughout the year. So you've got guys like Patton playing in his second game, and boys enjoyed getting around him.
You know, sorry.
Rowan Marshall going well.
Well, I was going to get... He's impressive. Oh,
Yeah.
he spells his name incorrectly, but he's... But speaking of which, Patton has one T. Surely it's Peyton. I know he reckons it's Patton, but I'm sorry. What's his first name?
Ben.
Ben, you're wrong. It's Peyton.
I thought it's Paton.
Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, there was just, Gresham's a good player. Jack Loney's a tricky little bugger. He plays for a few frees. I could see him getting under the skin of opposition fans.
So is something like that performance enough to make you change your mind about where their list's at? Because like a week ago we were saying their list is horribly inadequate.
Well, I don't believe it's horribly inadequate. What I believe
Please
is...
tell me Sam Gilbert's not going on next year.
He did have 2 kicks in the last quarter that need to be seen to be believed, but he was very competitive.
He's the most accident-prone, experienced footballer.
Oh, you've got... Did you see the 2 kicks he had in the last quarter?
Well, the one went out in the full.
Yeah, standing on the boundary, he just kicked
there was 2 went out in the full.
Well, he barreled one on the full. But look, he's much loved down there. He's an elder statesman. He's from Queensland. He didn't grow up playing football, and
it still looks like it after 10 years.
Yeah, but he's been a competitive soul.
But he's the sort of guy they've got to move past.
Well, they are.
Sure.
They will move past it.
Yeah, okay.
Look, he came in for Carlisle, and congratulations, Jake, on having a child.
Is that why he didn't play?
Yep.
Because it was born on Saturday, was it?
It was, I think on Friday night or Saturday night.
Okay.
So, congratulations there. The Hawks, look, Jack Steele, this was a big talking point. He played a very good game on Mitchell. He's had a good year, Steele.
Has he?
Yeah,
or just a last
No, he's
few
had a good
weeks?
year.
Yeah, okay.
He plays run with, he's tough, he's uncompromising, good kid. And Hawthorn were much less without him.
Yeah.
Now, why teams need to play him tighter?
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
That could be a bad blueprint for Hawthorn going forward.
I reckon that was sort of the kick in the bum the Hawks needed.
I was shocked. Isaac Smith played in the forward line. Was he a crook or something?
Yeah.
He normally kills St Kilda.
But I reckon that's sort of the rude awakening which they had without actually having to lose a game. All right, let's move on. 8th game of the round we're talking about. I've got to be honest, this was boring as. Carlton Western Bulldogs. Bulldogs 10-6-66. Defeated Carlton 7-7. 49, 6 goals to 5 at 3/4 time. Now, look, I mean, credit to the Blues. The Dogs have rediscovered their mojo a bit, and the Blues were able to sort of make it a real scrap and sort of keep them reined in. But the Bulldogs sort of did what they had to for long enough to emerge with the points. I can't really find that much more to say about it, to be honest. I actually did fall asleep at one stage in this game.
I was at my sister's this afternoon for my niece's birthday, and I was told to turn off the TV during lunch. I did, and then I turned it back on, and the score hadn't changed. Yes. I thought, did I pause it?
No, look, let's not be disrespectful. Let's find a couple of things.
Nothing happened in that third quarter. I mean, I turned it off 20 minutes later. I turned it back on. It was in the last quarter.
No,
the score was the same.
It was a bit like that. Debut for De Conning, son of former Footscray player Terry De Conning. I don't know why I remember him so well, given he only played for about 2 years.
And he came to St Kilda and he broke down.
Young De Conning or Terry?
Terry, and he broke down in a pre-season game.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
So he joined that. Actually, it wasn't his first kick, was it? But he scored a goal in his debut.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed.
Is that getting ridiculous now?
Getting illustrious band.
No, getting around
when
them.
they kick their first goal.
That kid. You would have thought he just won the World Cup.
Yeah. Well, so you've got to celebrate small victories at Carlton at the moment. One thing about the Bulldogs, Dunkley, who in their premiership year was sort of playing as a smaller pressure forward, wasn't he? He seems to have spent a lot more time midfield, and I think he's going pretty well at the moment. Yeah. Hunter, what I've seen of the Doggies lately, Hunter's been vastly improved, and Bontempelli is Bontempelli. So where do we reckon they're at? Can we see them sort of really having another big year next year, do you think?
There's going to be a bit of a purge at the end of the year. There's players either out of contract or free agency that either they're not sure they want to be there or the club's not sure. And we're talking about sort of favourite sons going back a couple of years. Luke Dalhouse, Roughhead, Wallace. So there's a lot of water to go under the bridge. It's a bridge that it's sort of been forged by the coach, and maybe he's now got the players that he wants to go ahead with. and there might be some big names moved on.
Fair enough.
I just want to say, Carlton has now, he's my favourite footballer. He is something else, Patrick Cripps. He is a courageous, he got a hospital pass from Mark Murphy today. It was such a stupid kick by Mark Murphy, and the Bulldogs player took a fair mark in the back line, and this kid was in such pain. I love his attitude. He got back out there.
Yeah.
He is a mighty footballer.
Yeah,
mighty.
And he's had another great season.
Oh, he's a ripper.
All right, final game of the round over in Adelaide, and the Kangaroos had very, very fleeting finals hopes. Well, they have now officially been extinguished, but not without one hell of a fight. Final scores in this game, and I'm going to have to look at the screen because I forgot to write down the final scores. 12-14, 86 the Crows, 11-11, 77. In fact, I'm just going to write that down now. 12-14, 86, 11-11, 77. So Crows 5-6 goals up for much of this game. Still 5 goals up at three-quarter time and 5 goals to 2 in the last quarter. I reckon, North aren't going to play finals, but we shouldn't sell them short. I reckon they've had a really good season, the Roos, and I thought it was a really brave effort by them.
Is it building blocks for the future? The reason
Absolutely.
the reason I ask that is there still is. They had a good run with injuries. They've had a good run with injuries this season. Bar weight, really. I mean, they sort of need all hands on deck.
Yeah, well, to that end, I thought, he was a little bit up and down, but he started really well. Hartung, when he got injured, robbed him of a bit of pace.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Billy. And that back line, look, Majak Daw has really made a difference. So he's a ripper. But there are some ageing players in that team, aren't there? When you think of Thompson, Waite, of course, who was important tonight.
Waite's a young 42, though, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right. There is some age in that side. Who's developed this year? Who's come through? They need some depth. Will Walker looks promising.
I like Walker.
Well, let's hope he's okay. Because he landed on his leg.
Yeah. No, who's Clark, I think, continues to look better.
Wood is a tantalising prospect.
Yeah.
Dumont?
He's got better. There's an obvious one I'm missing, and it's Majak Daw.
Yeah, I'm saying Majak Daw's...
Oh, did you say Daw? Did you? Sorry.
But I just hope that this wasn't North at their best this year. If they got off to a poor start next year, if the fixture doesn't favour them, they could still find it hard. Yeah,
I'll give you one. Look, we tended to say this when they made the preliminary finals too. We don't sort of give them enough credit for the list management. I don't think. I had a look. I'm pretty sure going into this season, in list terms, they had less games experience than any other club in the competition, even like Gold Coast and Brisbane. I think so. That could be one of the silliest things I said, but it just rings a bell. I think that's right. So they've got a lot of upside.
The other thing, just on Adelaide, look, I know that got close at the end. They were 36 points up in that third quarter. Yeah. Their ball movement was tremendous.
Well, it's sort of back to last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, they are a prospect for next season. And
I
know I've said this before, and I don't hate the bloke, and I've got a plan for him. Yeah. And I'll tell it to you later. Yeah. But they really look better without Walker.
Yeah, you have got a limp for him.
Yep.
So have we cut them, you and I, cut the Crows too much slack with the injuries? I mean, if you're making a grand final, you shouldn't be missing finals the next year.
You shouldn't be, but...
It knocked them about.
You know, that team is going to restructure a bit. So we're used to Laird and Smith off the back line. It'll be different next year. Wayne Miller will come off that half.
Yeah, no, he's been good. He's been a plus.
Oh, yeah, so they've found a few things. What they need to do is look to the next generation of ruckman at that club. Riley O'Brien's never played for them. Sam Jacobs has been worked into the ground, and
he hasn't had a great year.
No, he got slaughtered by Goldstein. I mean, they need to look at that. There's some improvement to be had there.
One more. How much has Gibbs been worth the acquisition?
Look, Gibbs does his work. I've never found him to be a highly influential player, but he's not a front runner. He just is, part of a functioning midfield. You'd rather have him on the field than not have him on the field.
Yeah, well, they've got 6 months now to sort of chastise themselves about not making the finals after being in a grand final. I reckon they'll be pretty souped up by the time we hit next year. I'm pretty confident, though, they probably won't be doing a pre-season camp thing.
Yeah, they won't be. But Doday's a big plus for them.
Yeah.
Galucci.
Camp down.
Doodah.
You're about the only person that would get that, I reckon.
But Galucci, he played well
Yeah.
again. There's some pluses in that team.
Yeah, no, there is.
Miller is a big plus. I think they've, of the two South Australian teams, I think they've got more to look forward to in 19 than Port Adelaide.
Oh, it's an interesting debate, that one. Very quickly, Jaron Parkinson says Walker is too arrogant of a player, can't back it up on the field. Finey is nodding in vigorous agreement with that.
Yeah, look, he casts a shadow. Do you want to hear my theory?
Can you do it quickly?
Yeah, I think Adelaide should trade him, and I think they should trade him to Carlton, and offer, because Carlton got these young forwards. They need a big, imposing figure desperately, a real one. I think Walker would be a great fit for Carlton. Adelaide give Carlton Walker and their first pick, which will be what, about number 9 or 10.
Carlton's first pick.
Adelaide's first pick.
Yeah.
Around 9 or 10
Yeah.
for pick number 1.
It's not going to happen.
Why not?
He's the captain of the club. You're not going to trade the captain of the club.
I'm just saying that Walker and Adelaide's first pick for pick number 1 would be a great move.
Yeah, okay. No, we'll
Think about it, Adelaide.
Yeah, I don't reckon they will.
I reckon they would.
All right, that is the wraparound for this week. Time now to move on to our favourite intro, Hot or Not.
Where is it?
Hot or Not.
Oh, this is a dream come true for
Well,
me.
something always goes wrong in this show, and this week it's this.
No, my computer's just
Oh, no.
I'm
no
going to give it one
guitar.
more,
not yet.
please.
It's just gone frozen.
I feel naked without it. All right, will we just get into it? It's better. All right,
You know who you're becoming like? You're becoming like, Guitar Hero on South Park. Have you seen that episode? Yeah.
Where the kids are playing Guitar Hero and Randy Marsh picks up an actual guitar and plays the solo out of what's that song by Kansas? Some incredible solo, and the kids aren't impressed because it's not on Guitar Hero. Oh, geez, I almost knocked myself out then. I'm staying with a hot, and we touched on him before, Chris Mayne. And there was a fantastic photo taken post-game on Saturday of Nathan Buckley congratulating Travis Varco and Chris Mayne on the side of it. And just the expression on his face, it was sort of, I couldn't work out whether it was Tiny Tim or Strop or some, it was a weird, check out the photo if you see it. I think I tweeted it. But he would have been the most pilloried player in the AFL last year. Everyone was talking about the worst player acquisition of all time, the worst deal, the amount of money he was getting paid, which wasn't his fault. He didn't stuff up that deal. He had a coach who basically publicly said he really didn't want to get him across. Didn't play him, only played 3 games to the season. You could have had long odds indeed on him being a factor in Collingwood this year. Well, he's played 16 games. He's averaging a career high of 18 disposals. Against Port Adelaide, he had 27 disposals, which is also a career high, 5 tackles and a goal. Best figures in 191 senior games. And he's really given him something off a wing. He's been terrific. Well done, Chris Mayne.
Imagine if I would have said to you last year that pivotal to Collingwood's ascension into the top 4 would be Chris Mayne, Collingwood VFL player, Brodie Myercheck, Port Melbourne VFL player, and Mason Cox, then a Collingwood VFL player, much maligned.
I would have said, you're dreaming, Finey, you're dreaming.
Well, that dream is now reality.
Okay, your turn.
My first hot is Alex Sexton, number 6 for the Gold Coast Suns. Look, I know a lot of people don't watch the Gold Coast Suns, including most of the 11,000 that they claim are there each week.
Oh, I thought you were going to say most of the Gold Coast.
Well, yeah, I think I'm implying that. But this guy, he kicked 5 out of 6 against Melbourne. That was a really good effort. He loves a goal. He kicked a goal against Brisbane on the weekend. You've got to see it. It's a long-range sort of check side kick that just, he made the ball talk. he's become a really dangerous forward. And one could only imagine, given that there's no one else up there, and he cops a fair bit of attention from the opposition, how he would go as a fourth forward in a good team. He'd be Menzel. I really believe he'd be like Daniel Menzel-like in a really good team.
What is his defining attribute? Is there one, or is he?
Well,
just
he does
a
make
solid
the
player?
he makes the ball talk. He's got a touch of the day. His
Yeah,
ability
touch of
from
the day-cops.
well, his ability from the boundary or from anywhere to kick around corners. He knows the feel of the ball, and he's a beautiful. He's an opportunist. He reads the play really well. He's not strong body-wise, but he can work his opponent under the ball. He's one of those classic half-forward flankers from the old school. I love watching him play.
I love that expression, makes the ball talk. So when someone does make the ball talk, what does the ball say? I am going to go through the goals.
You know what it says? It says, I'm going to do what you intend it to do.
Yeah.
There's different parts of the ball to make it spin a certain way. And some players have no idea. We're talking about Sam Gilbert. He has played the game for a decade. He has no idea what part of the ball to kick.
I just thought of what the ball says when Sam Gilbert kicks it.
Oh! But really, I mean, you know, in soccer, you have a look at these great dead ball players like
Merchants.
Ronaldo.
Yeah.
It's not an accident. They have kicked this ball thousands of times as a youngster, and they know each part of the ball.
Yeah.
That kicking it on the stitching is different kicking it, and footballers don't spend enough time with the ball in their hands, but I've got a feeling Alex Sexton does.
All right, good call. I'm going with the knot. In fact, I've got 2 knots this week. First time ever, I think. This one, and a quite serious one, my knot goes to Ross Lyon, Fremantle coach. Not necessarily for that performance, so it was pretty abysmal, but his performance in the post-match press conference. Now, if you haven't had a look, you can see it on the AFL website. They got their bottom kicked, so there were obviously going to be some hard questions asked. One of the very appropriate questions was asked by a very good football journo in Shane Hope, who writes for the West Australian. Shane simply asked him, and not right at the start, he asked him, is the rebuild on track? To which Ross slipped into his sort of slightly smart-arsey, I'm going to turn the question back on you and make you look like an idiot, guys. And he then turned it on Shane and said it was unfair to ask that because it was just after a game. Well, absolute rubbish. I mean, not every question at a press conference is specifically about what happened in those 4 quarters. It's about the bigger picture. So it was a pretty obvious question. And then Ross turned it on Shane and said, well, how long should a rebuild take? And Shane said, well, a few years. And he said, what do you mean by a few? He said, well, 3 or 4. And he said, can you name anyone else that's done it in 3 or 4? Now, Shane, unfortunately, was probably caught short in that moment, but, you know, Hawthorn this year springs to mind. Geelong and Sydney have managed to sort of remake themselves over a reasonably short period of time. But that aside, I mean, the press conference is a place where the coach is supposed to be giving a message to supporters of the club, not playing a smart ass and trying to deflect and divert attention off your own shortcomings. So he's done this a bit, Ross, and he can be pretty prickly in that situation. He's absolutely feeling the pinch. But if I was a Freo supporter, I would have been watching that and thinking, can you stop this crap? I want to hear your explanation as to why we just got belted by 133 points. And is this much vaunted rebuild actually getting anywhere? So not a great look for the club. I don't reckon Ross would be that rapt about his effort in that looking back.
Yeah, good pick-up. And I'll say this. I don't know Shane Hope, and he shouldn't be the one answering questions. He's the one actually asking the questions. But I'd say this to Ross Lyon, if he turned it back on me, that was a valid question. And I would say this. In the last month and a half, of the players named best and playing best for the Fremantle Dockers, Lachie Neale and David Mundy have been probably week in, week out, the 2 best players, maybe with Ed Langdon. All right, Langdon is part of the rebuild. Fife came back in, he was best. So it became Fife, Mundy and Neale. Where's the rebuild? Where are the players beyond the absolute predictable old names? I mean, it doesn't take much to get Mundy, Neale and Fife to be your best 3.
No, that's my thing about the rebuild. It's tended to be cameos, and there seems to be not a lot of continuity about it. And I don't like the way they play. It just, the way they play footy smacks to me of, it's got 2009 written all over it. It's 2018 now. All right, your turn. Oh, hang on, have we got a quick one on that? Jaron says, rebuild needs a new coach. Well, it's interesting, the sort of temperature in WA this week about how much heat he will come under. He's contracted to the end of 2020, and it will be an awfully large payout. So I don't think that's going to happen. But, yeah, I think some serious questions need to be asked.
Well, live by the sword, die by the sword. He arrived there in a coup.
Yeah.
And he could go in a coup, except a different sort of coup. Their club song doesn't have many words, does it? Free-o, free-o.
Free-o, heave-ho, yeah.
Yeah, it's give the coach the heave-ho might be a line that could be added, because I think they've run tired of him.
All right, your turn.
Not hot is one of my favourite coaches. Brad Scott's had a really good year. I think he made a mistake in this desperately important game against Adelaide. Now, I know that they rattled at them at the end of the game and they got within 3 points. So this might seem unfair, but they dominated the last quarter. They had inside 50 after inside 50, and Ben Brown was off his tucker. Now, Majak Dor has marked everything for the last 10 weeks. The last time he went forward, he kicked 4 goals. I was amazed that why when they were bombing the ball into the forward line, was it not to Majak Dor?
Who goes where, Dor?
Well, you just have to put Ben Brown in
defence?
Well, you either rotate around and work out whether he goes into defence and plays solely on Jenkins. Remembering that Jenkins kicked their only goal for the quarter, or before the late goal to Betts. But I just felt, look, it's easy to sit in the grandstand, but I think the comment was made on the TV coverage. I was shocked that Majak Dor didn't go down there.
Yeah, no, it's a fair call. It's a fair call. All right, last one for me, and it's another not. Now, I've been a big supporter of this club's aspirations. I liked I liked what they did in loading up on senior talent for a crack. I speak of Port Adelaide. But their last 6 weeks have been terrible. They've lost 5 out of 6 now. They are going to miss the 8, regardless of what happens next week, unless there is the biggest turn-up in the history of turn-ups. I couldn't think of the right analogy. But they have lost their... Port, to me, look a really, really good side when they back themselves and they attack and they run and they score, most importantly.
Yep.
The most damning stat on Port this year, Finey, is that they've gone from being the second highest scoring team in the comp to the 13th highest. They've kicked 10 goals or less 4 games out of the last 6. Okay, they've lost Charlie Dixon now, but they had him available up until last week. And they just, the way they play their footy, it's so cautious. And I found in that game against Collingwood, they'd play cautiously. Collingwood would get a run on and get sort of 3 goals up or whatever. And then it would be, okay, we better go bang. So there was a moment in the second quarter, Jared Pollock kicked that great goal with a couple of balks. And it's only when they're sort of desperately in trouble that they seem to sort of throw caution to the wind.
Yep.
They need to throw caution to the wind across 4 quarters. Another good example of it, I think early in that last quarter, the young Jared Lynett got the ball darting around. I've got to find a free target. I've got to find a free target. Eventually he goes short to Jasper Pittard. It's called not 15 metres. He gets nailed, turnover, Collingwood goal. Port needs to attack. When they attack, they can challenge any side in the competition. When they don't, I think they're about where they're at now, which is going to miss the finals and a particularly disappointing end to the season for them.
You know, when they were going well last year and this year, their players they had some players in golden form. Ryder was all Australian. Robbie Gray was becoming, bordering on legendary.
Yeah.
Ollie Wines was the young midfield bull of the comp. Now, that's not easy to keep up week in, week out. And all of them, I think, have suffered a bit from injuries and wear and tear. They're still great footballers, don't get me wrong. But as their output has diminished a bit, understandably, I don't think that slack's been taken up.
No, and I think you've got to sort of question their psychological toughness too, I think. Like losing a couple of games from a couple of goals up, but then the cave in on Saturday doesn't add up to a really resilient team, does it? All right,
no, it doesn't.
Finishes off.
Okay, I'm going to finish off with an umpire who's hot. and who I'm marking as hot. That sounds terrible, and I'll explain why in a minute. I didn't mean it.
Can I guess who it is?
Who?
The boy?
No.
Oh, I just like saying
All right,
the boy.
I'll tell you that.
I like the boy.
I'll tell you, the Ray Chamberlain comes under unfair criticism because he's easily recognisable, because he's shorter and louder than everybody else. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Now, the other most recognisable field umpire is
Jacob Mollinson.
Eleni Gluftsis.
Oh, yeah, right, okay.
Now, she umpired Hawthorn St Kilda, and I had a close look with the bias that comes with wanting one of the teams to win.
Yeah.
She umpires as well as all the other young umpires. She's not in the top bracket, but there's a group of young umpires. And, I saw the game this afternoon between North and Adelaide, and she's at that level of a very promising young umpire. No,
so this is a hot, isn't it?
yeah, it's a hot. I think it's a great effort. First of all, she bounces the ball really well in the centre, which is a fine achievement. It's not easy to do, and it was thought to be the reason why female umpires would be held back. But she has stepped in comfortably to be an AFL umpire, and more power to her, because it's easy in the stands to hate. People hate umpires, which is wrong. But the more identifiable the umpire, the harder their job is.
It's actually, now you bring it up, I was noticing her last night, and I was thinking, because you could hear the decisions or whatever, and I understand entirely why she's like this. She's still quite cautious about her interaction with players, isn't she?
Yeah, she is.
Absolutely understand why, because she's a trailblazer. Won't it be good the moment when you hear her sort of having the sort of exchange with the player that Ray Chamberlain or something like that does? Because it'll say the players are going, okay, we absolutely accept that you're one of us. You're in the fraternity, you know? So, she will be remembered very fondly in footy history as we get more female umpires.
Yeah, very
and there's
good.
several female goal umpires now, isn't there?
There is indeed. Off the SMS, Jeremy Parkinson was geary out of line with his comment to the umpire.
That was good.
I thought it was funny. Dean Margetts made a decision.
We'll just repeat what it was so people that weren't across
Well,
it.
Dean Margetts made a decision against Geary, and Geary turned around and said, "You've had a shocking season." And Margetts disagreed.
No, but he said, shocking season. Yeah. Well, wouldn't you have said to him, "What have you watched every one of my games?"
I think it was done, in a fit of petulance.
You know what I would have said if I was Margetts? I would have said, "What? You've watched every one of the games? Geez, I haven't watched every one of yours."
Yeah. Look, it was a comment, and as captain, maybe a comment he shouldn't have made. But Darren Geary's a very pleasant, easygoing bloke, and they would have had a laugh about it afterwards. Dean Margetts is either the most experienced or second most experienced umpire in the AFL.
Oh, Shane McInerney. Shane McInerney is up to...
I'm saying, so Dean would be second.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Very good evening, Shane McInerney, too. I once got out in the Turks with Shane McInerney after a game up at Carrara.
Oh, good.
Lachlan O'Connor, Grundy or Gawn for starting AA Ruck? Gee, that's a good question, and we haven't got the stats in front of us. I do...
I'll go the first letter. G. You go the next letter.
Well, I'm just right off the top of my head, impact. I'd probably go with Grundy, actually, at this stage.
I'd go with Gawn.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
And one more, best small forward right now.
That's interesting, because I was trying to think who the best small forward in
I've got it. Luke Bruce.
In the competition. Well, is he a small forward?
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
He's definitely in the All-Australian team.
See, he's not a small forward in the Eddie Betts, Tip and Woody Terrier mould.
Yep.
He's still a small forward.
It's interesting. I was trying to pick my All-Australian team, and it's a really interesting side.
I haven't had a crack yet.
Oh, it's a really interesting side to pick this year. Pardon me. Pardon me. Not as obvious,
This
maybe.
is live TV.
Not as obvious as previous years. Bruce definitely in it. And, yeah, that small forward role, it's hard to put your finger on it. It really is.
No, there's a few. One more. DeGoey, says Tony T.
Yeah, but DeGoey's 190 centimetres.
Oh, he still plays a small forward. I think the haircut rules him out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
like
you put DeGoey in the team, but yeah, it's hard to it's difficult to know.
Well,
I mean, I was picking a team. I'd put Dustin Martin in the forward line.
Well, I heard a few people the other night talking about whether Dusty get in, and I reckon he probably has to.
Yeah.
If he hadn't had the season last year, we'd all be raving about what a great season
Oh
he's
yeah,
had.
yeah. I think he has to go in.
All right, that's it for
Good
Hot or
stuff.
Not for this week. Time to move on. I'm not going to go on about how it's time to get angry. I feel strangely relaxed at the moment, Finey. Maybe you can whip me into a suitable frenzy. It's time. Yeah, go on.
I'm pissed off, Finey.
It's time for the Rant Off! All right, I got a good one. How did you know how I was going to start it tonight?
Oh, I'm a punter, mate. I just sort of backed it in.
I actually, for those just across this, I've started every single rant the same way, and I figure when you're on a good thing, stick to it. And Maestro, can you just lift that a little bit higher? Okay, let's go. All right, count me in.
It's funny because I just want to say this before I count you in. I like the way your first two lines is always "I'm pissed."
Yeah, off.
I'm just saying, but you always start "I'm pissed."
I guarantee you I'm pissed. Incidentally, to the number of people who every time I'm tweeting late at night and I get fired up about something, everyone goes, "Oh, I'm having a few reds, RoCo." I don't drink. When I say I don't drink, I have had a drink or two, but I actually don't.
And I don't drink either.
Yeah, we don't.
I've been accused.
We don't need artificial stimulants to get us into this state of madness.
I used to do Finey's Final Sign. I was accused of being drunk on drugs.
No, that was your cause.
Yeah, but I'm saying, it's funny how people are so used to the mainstream. You veer off it and you must be on something. You know what?
We're high on life.
I was going to say we're low on life.
All right, count me in.
3, 2 and the next number.
I'm pissed off with Hawthorn, Finey. Who do they think they are, sitting in the top 4, set to pull a Swifty on the competition, maybe pinch another flag? The Hawks are like bloody Schwarzenegger in the Terminator. You think you've killed them off and they get up again and have another crack. It's not supposed to happen. Here's some history for you, Finey, and you better brace yourself. 1971's nearly 50 seasons ago. At three-quarter time on grand final day that year, your Saints led the Hawks by 20 points and were about to win their second premiership. Hawthorn's still stuck on 1. Here we are in 2018. Hawthorn is potentially about to win a 14th flag. How many have St Kilda won?
Oh, piss off.
That's an average of 1 every 4 years. And St Kilda still won. No wonder they got out of jail again against the Saints on Saturday night. Even Alistair Clarkson reckons they shouldn't have won. But they just do. I've lost count of the number of times I've written an obituary for Hawthorn over the years, Finey. I wrote one when Peter Hudson did his knee, and I was still in grade 2. Got an A+ for it as well because my teacher was an Essendon supporter. I did another one in the old Sun News pictorial days after the Bombers fixed them up in a second straight grand final in 1985. We thought we got rid of them altogether in 1996, and then bloody Don Scott ripped that Velcro hawk off the Melbourne jumper and ruined everything. And then we all had another crack when they got rid of Mitchell and Lewis and lost 5 of their first 6 last year. They were 17th on the ladder. But like Monty Python, the Holy Grail, when they're loading that guy on the stretcher with bubonic plague and he yells out, "I'm not dead yet." They bloody weren't. Now we're all going to pay the price. More romanticising of Clarko, more kids jumping on the bandwagon, more of the worst colour scheme in the history of world sport. It's not fair, Hawthorn. Give someone else a bloody go, will you?
They are, I agree. Look, they are, in my time following football, by far the best team.
Well,
by far.
Scores on the board, isn't it?
And what people don't realise is that they came from an abysmally low and seemingly through the 40s and 50s, impossible to improve on base.
And they were the Mayblooms and they were the mustard pots.
You see, what people don't realise, their inclusion in the then VFL was very controversial in 1925. North Melbourne, Footscray, yes. And the next best team was clearly Port Melbourne. But with, an eye on the future and that same expansionist bravado that took us eventually interstate, the powers that be then said, we don't need another inner city team. Let's get out into the leafy suburbs. And they were considered a joke because football was a working class sport. And this was a genteel suburb that simply couldn't play that same roughhouse brand of football that the VFL was.
Well, so this is...
And they were stuck. They were hopeless.
And what's happened to their supporter base too, the merger turned their supporter base from leafy sort of Campwell, Xavier going, wicker basket, thermos carrying types into feral tradies from Narre Warren.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, I've this is a famous sort of interesting piece of football memorabilia. I've only ever seen a copy of it. It was an advertisement placed in the Hawthorn Gazette or Tribune, the local paper, in about 1929, and it was put in there by the local Presbyterian church, pointing out that Hawthorn were hosting Fitzroy that weekend, or the weekend coming. And the previous year, the visiting Fitzroy fans had variously stolen ornaments from front gardens in Hawthorn, had miterated in people's front gardens, and had, in one instance, taken out the back window of a lorry. So there was strong advice, given that they were playing Fitzroy, to make preparations and have no valuables, and this was the term used, have no valuables visible to the visiting hordes from Fitzroy.
There you go. I love your little cultural anecdotes. Mark says, can the Hawks beat Sydney? Of course they can. They've actually got a pretty good record at the SCG, from memory.
Of course they, absolutely.
All right, your rant time now. I'm counting you in. 3, 2, 1, rant.
I don't know whether it's because of the cold weather and the fact that I am feeling it the older that I get. I felt this weekend, even though the temperature was hovering around the 9 or 10, it was -2 for most of the weekend. Rain pouring, wind blowing. But I'm a grumpy old man, Rowan. Everything got on my nerves on the weekend. Everything. From the Hawthorn St Kilda game, the last quarter, where we just kept kicking the ball into the forward line and couldn't score. And yes, Sam Gilbert's beautiful display of making the ball scream, not talk. Then I turned on the soccer. I actually got Optus this year to watch my beloved West Ham lose their second game in a row for the season. Surrender
To
on
who?
these to Bournemouth.
The Cherries.
The commentators got on my nerve. I blamed them. Things just kept going from bad to worse all weekend. I played darts, and with my third throw of the night, my dart broke in half, so I had to retire because I didn't have any replacement darts. And then I really got angry because I wanted to watch a particular race on TV today, and Sky Channel moved it to their second channel, which I don't have because you've got to pay for it. And then I went to my sister's for lunch, and I wasn't allowed to watch the footy, and I got angry there and had to go at my nephew. And you know what I've realised? It's not the weather, it's not the rest of the world, it's not the commentators, the umpires, it's not even Channel 7 or Optus Vision, it's me. The longer I live on this earth, the more I hate it. And I'm pretty sure when you die, you don't go to another planet. So I'm just going to have to put up with it. The Saints aren't getting any better. The weather's not getting any warmer. And I've got to stop getting shittier.
Sounds like the sort of rant I do, but I'm with you. Yeah, everything, you know, you think we're a couple of grumpy old men, but wait till you reach our age. Everything pales, doesn't it?
I went today and I bought a jacket. That's how cold I was this weekend. I went
So
and bought a jacket.
I'm interested in your sister making you turn the footy off. How was that sort of, Mark?
No, it
there'll be
wasn't
no
my sister.
football.
No. She doesn't mind footy. And
So who made you turn it off?
My mother. You didn't come here to watch the football. Turn off the football.
Not being able to hear the D's sing the song. Oh, well, we could.
Oh, that was the other thing. That was the other thing. That annoyed me as well.
We both brought that up
Yeah,
independently.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Ben.
Yeah.
Good communicator, whatever method that comes by.
And you know what? You wouldn't mind it if Channel 7 pissed off to the news and it was, you know, world leader assassinated. But the first story tonight was Jane Bunn talking about how much snow had fallen on Mount Dandenong. Oh, hold the back page.
Is Jane related to Mark?
Mark Bunn used to play for Fitzroy. Yeah. No. Boy, it's funny how many forums Jane Bunn's name comes up. And I won't go where I was going to go with that. But yeah, those 320 games, what a crap time slot. And it's any time there's a big result and there are ramifications out of it and you need to see some sort of postscript to the game, it was literally no more than like 45 seconds. Absolute rubbish.
Yeah, it's
so you know how you handle that, don't you? You make a point of turning on to another network's news service. Either that or
you listen to us.
You listen to us. But
would
we're
you do
on
that?
at 7:30,
Yeah.
an hour and a half
We'll
late.
sing the club song for you. By the way,
No, you watch us instead of watching Bounce.
of course, had you watched that club song being sung, you would have noted it was the only club song
Without
without reference.
Without reference to the club. Incidentally, how lame is it when they record the theme song? I think Bounce do this actually. They record the theme song and like an hour later they go, "Well, here you are, David fans. Here's your." It's an hour later. You're sort of the novelty's sort of worn off. You know, you're not quite as sort of vociferous about it.
Well, if it's 11 at night, that's when you've got to wake up your 4-year-old. Here's the club. Here's the song.
Have we got another? Tony says over officious umps who now seem to have dismissed the protected zone.
Oh, they did. Oh, they didn't dismiss it. That was the worst one I've ever seen today.
I saw one. Yeah, which game was that?
Was that?
It was the West Coast Melbourne game, wasn't it? A Melbourne player got pinged, I think.
Maybe North Melbourne, Adelaide. There was one as well.
Yeah,
Rory Laird it was. North Melbourne, Willie Walker had the ball.
Willie Walker.
And Laird, he took the mark as Laird was sort of running at him, and Laird just continued running, and the umpire paid 50 metres.
Yeah. They hate word association because he said Willie Walker. Now, for the whole night, I'm going to be thinking of Willy Wonka, which means I'm going to be thinking of chocolate, which means I'm going to get a block of caramello on the way home and absolutely demolish it, Finey, because I love caramello.
You've won, Charlie, you've won.
That's a great movie. Gene Wilder.
Yeah.
Gene Wilder playing Willy Wonka rather than Gene Wilder in the Woody Allen film Everything You Always Wanted to Know About
Oh, that was
Sex,
great. He played a psychiatrist
who falls in love with his sheep.
Yeah.
And he ends up a bum on
at a
the streets
buffet.
drinking wool mix.
Yeah, but just on
No.
that,
Matt Williams asked, can you state your top 8? Oh, yeah, sorry, I can because I did my ladder predictor.
well, it's done.
Yeah, it's the same as you see now. I've got, and no, it's not actually, because I've got Sydney beating Hawthorn next week. So I have very quickly, really quickly.
Is this like the longest epilogue our show's ever
Yeah, I
had?
know it's crap. Nah, get back to me. I'll tell you later. I've got it written down somewhere.
And let me just say this as a final football Willy Wonka reference.
Yeah,
That comparing, people say what's happened to the Bulldogs. It's like the Bulldogs of 2016 were the Gene Wilder version of Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
And this year it's the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka.
which means what?
Well, that was just such a horrible remake.
I didn't see it.
Oh, they didn't have Oompa Loompas. They just had one guy in mirrors.
Really?
They had one guy play all the Oompa
The
Loompas.
remake's never better than the original. Have you seen one remake that's better than the original ever?
A remake.
Yeah, not a
Yeah.
part 2.
Yeah.
What?
True Grit by the Coen brothers. Brilliant.
Oh, so I've only seen the original with John Wayne.
Rooster Cogburn.
Rooster Cogburn.
Well, this one's with Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
It is a magnificent movie.
So a good example, The Manchurian Candidate, my favourite movie of all time, Frank Sinatra. The remake is actually all right, but it's still not a patch on the original.
That's my tip for you. Coen brothers, True Grit.
Yeah, I don't know about the Coen brothers. They're a bit weird.
I beg your pardon.
They are a bit weird.
Big Lebowski.
Yeah, a bit overrated.
Overrated. You haven't watched it
It's okay.
properly.
No, I have. It's okay.
Mr. Lebowski.
Oh, so I'm a bit like this with Tarantino.
Fargo.
Yeah, Fargo's good. Tarantino. Where
Miller's
do you
Crossing?
stand on Tarantino? Yeah.
Miller's Crossing's a great movie.
Where do you stand on Tarantino?
Yeah, that's a bit talk show.
So
I think
Pulp
that's.
Fiction. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
it's
it hasn't aged all that well.
It's a victory of style over substance, Tarantino.
Yeah, more a movie film clip over 2 hours than a movie.
And that's it for this week in cinema. No, that's it for the show. Thanks for watching. Big last round coming up. We'll be back next Sunday, 7:30 p.m. Don't forget the audio version of the podcast Thursday morning. Quick,
No Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men. That is a great movie. See ya!